Ember Witch. Book 1. The Lich. Volume 1. Black Tragedy. Chapter 2. The Nightmare Begins. September 8, 457 to October 17, 458 BME. Fragment 12. Meridia. Eve, Ares, and Lilith were coming up to the city's edge. Eve took note of the large wall and the section that had collapsed and remembered that Mary had told her there was an accident in the city. She had a small fear that Farron was injured or even killed in the accident, but it looked like it had happened long before she left home. Certainly she would have been notified if he was involved in it, so she pushed that thought out of her mind. They approached the gate and were stopped by 2 guards. One was a pink-faced boy wielding a pole axe, clad in a brand-new set of armor, and the other was a gruff dark-skinned man in a rusted chest plate.
"State your purpose, ma'am,"
the dark-skinned man said in a low voice.
"I'm here to visit the Church of Creation. I received a letter telling me to come immediately,"
she said, pulling the letter from her pocket and flashed it to the man. He struggled to read it in the setting sun. He handed it back and frowned.
"I'm afraid they aren't seeing anyone, ma'am. They've been locked up for the past few weeks. Damn priests didn't even show to pay respects to the deceased,"
he said, glancing over to the destroyed section of the wall.
"I need to see them. I'm sure they would let me in,"
Eve said, trying not to let the man's disrespect of the church offend her.
"So be it. Open the gate,"
the man said, smirking. He stepped back to let the small horse and cart pass. Lilith and Ares were asleep in the cart, oblivious to their surroundings. The gate slowly opened and Eve nudged the horse forward. She stopped a mile into town at a small building with a torch-lit sign that read "The Walls Inn." She parked the horse, opened the door, and paid the innkeep for a room, then went out to gather her things and wake the kids. Syria awoke feeling much better. She sat up and looked around the room. She felt like she had been sleeping for days. She stepped out of bed and didn't feel any pain. She inhaled through her nose and stretched. She noticed that her body was healing. She clenched her fist and a small black flame engulfed it.
"Yes, it wore off. I can stop killing myself,"
she said in excitement. She sat down in front of the box and projected a black aura around the page. It levitated out of the box and she smiled. No pain, no tremors, just pure magic flowed through her body. It still was a struggle working with the page, but with her block finally removed, she wasn't having to use twice the amount of effort and life force to examine the magic imbued within the text. She studied the page closely and found a particular section intriguing. It was a strange symbol shaped like a star, but had 5 other shapes around it. She found a strand of silver magic ringing the symbol and she followed it. Hints of bound magic and flavors of fire wafted off of the page. Strange, she didn't think she left any impressions on the page. Surely she didn't, because it was silver. She noted the color and moved on. After 5 hours she had an 8th word. Now her notes read sacrifice, child, black, moon, lich, blade, deer, and sex. She arranged the words several times and came up with what made the most sense, adding the needed contextual words that may fit. Sex, sacrifice, the child of Vir with the black blade of the moon to summon the lich. She stared at what she just wrote and shuddered. Obviously it wasn't exactly what the instructions said, but it was as close as she could get with the time she had. The family would be here within the week and she had used far too much energy to continue searching for the full answer. She let her magic disperse and the page dropped back into the box. She grabbed the key from between her cleavage and locked it. Tucking the key away once again with the gemstone that hung around her neck, she picked up her notes and the box, then walked out the door. She walked by the patient's room, checked in on him, then shut the door. She brought the pages to Father Haith and placed them down in front of him.
"I didn't have time to get all the answers, but this is what I could learn from it. The gemstone is a powerful magical enhancer. If used through a soul-binding method, it can be used to negate a blocking spell like the one I placed on myself to keep the darkness from the page of the narcosis from affecting me on my ride back. I don't know where it came from, but it's too powerful to simply give back to that family. If they were to still have magical residue from the page, it could draw in that magic and continue to be affected by nightmares or even kill them.
Sirius said, letting Haith go over the notes.
I thought that humans couldn't use magic, but I've come to learn over the past week that if they were to possess such an object like this one, they could use their own soul as magic. I was blocked from using my own magic for 2 weeks, and I used the gemstone to project my soul as magic. This object is too dangerous to be in the hands of anyone but a trained mage, so I will keep it with me,
she continued. Father Haith read each page, skimming over hastily scribbled notations of magical color, elements, words, and theories.
So what you are saying is that the page is a guide on how to summon a lich. I don't understand what most of this means, Syria. A lich would be able to destroy life as we know it. Tear a hole in the fabric of reality. This page must be destroyed. We cannot allow anyone to know of its existence,
Father Haith said, trying not to be so dramatic but failing.
I understand, Father, but there is more to it. This page seems to have been created after the narcosis was already written. From my knowledge of it in my days at the Mage's Hall, the book was written by a mage with red magic, but this page is silver. Silver mages are rare, not so rare that they are one of a kind, but silver magic being a trait only passed down by a unique circumstance,
Sirius said, pacing now.
My hypothesis is that this page was another mage attempting to add to the book. This is just a theory, but it's the most plausible conclusion I have come to on why this page is here and wasn't destroyed nearly 200 years ago. I have also discovered that the page is not only instructions but could be a code of some sort, a code to unlocking a new form of magic, an ancient spell, or a message to another mage. I can't say for certain, but its symbols all corresponds with existing or discarded elven words. For example, that symbol there,
she said, pointing to a strange triangular pattern with dots in the center of each triangle.
This word, when focused with magic, says black, but in ancient Elvish it meant the black of night. As I studied the page further, I began writing down both the modern and ancient meanings of the words. Most of them are shortened in modern Elvish, such as black of night to just black.
She rambled on and on about her findings, and Haith was beginning to lose his attention. He looked down at the page as she pointed out another symbol.
This one here is child, but in ancient Elvish it's a plural, children.
This gained full attention from Haith.
Children? Eve has 2 daughters. Could there be a correlation?
He asked.
Yes, there certainly is. This was just as shocking to me as it is to you, the child of black or the children of the night. It's aimed at either one, but in this case it's the plural,
Sirius said.
You know so much of your people's history and culture. This is eye-opening for sure, my dear,
Father Haith said, stroking his chin.
Well, I don't know everything. I was middle of the road when it came to my grades during my time at the Mage's Hall,
Syria admitted.
My true passion during class was health and healing magic. The rest of it was rather boring, if I had to tell the truth,
she said, fiddling with her horn again.
Ah well, for someone who didn't get perfect scores, you are still extremely knowledgeable,
Haith said, still stroking his chin. Sirius smiled.
I do what I can to help those in need, even if it means reading tons of boring history books and dry documents,
Sirius said, and Haith nodded.
What are your plans for destroying the page now that you have learned its many secrets?
Haith asked.
I need at least 3 days to prepare. I think the right spell for it is a blocking spell directly onto the page, then we can burn it without fear of its magic getting out. However, I can't burn it directly. We will have to create a fire in the church,
Sirius said, trying not to sound excited about it, so she trailed off at the end of her sentence.
We must do what is necessary. Just be careful, young lady. You have a knack for this sort of thing after all,
Haith replied, agreeing with her.
Take your time and ensure that no one turns into a torch,
he continued with a small smirk. Eve and her children were riding through the city for a few hours looking for the Chapel of Creation. The large size of the city made travel a hassle for its citizens, but to an outsider it was a nightmare. They finally got a decent idea of where they were and how far away it was when they stopped to ask a young woman running a fish stand. She had let them know it was only 20 minutes away, just up the road. They approached the stairs on their cart and had to get off. The staircase was long and difficult to tread for Ares due to her small size, but eventually, they all made it to the top. They were greeted by a majestic archway soaring high in the sky that led to a massive wooden door carved with images of great beauty. They approached the door and Eve knocked loudly. For several moments no answer or even sign of life came from the grand church, so she knocked again, calling out,
"Priest, it's Eve Black, the woman whom you summoned."
She stood there waiting for an answer, and after another few minutes she frowned.
"We will have to try another day,"
she said to her kids, and began walking away. Just before she entered the archway, she heard a clicking sound and the squeak of hinges.
"Miss Black, please come in,"
a voice spoke behind her. She turned around and saw a young man standing in the open doorway.
"Ah, I thought you were not here, Father,"
Eve said.
"Oh no, I'm not the priest, I am merely a humble servant of His Holiness,"
the young man said, showing the way in.
"We have been expecting your arrival,"
he continued as Eve and her children walked into the door. They walked down a long hallway and into the sanctuary where 3 massive statues stood. Lilith looked up in awe. She was so taken by the beauty that she began praying in a soft, low voice. Ares wasn't as impressed but still took in the sights. Eve was almost in tears as she looked around the room. She hadn't thought it would be this beautiful and breathtaking. The young man sat them down on the first row pew.
"My name is Brother Jaren. I am an understudy of the priest. He will be here shortly. Just sit tight and I will retrieve him,"
he said, bowing, then walked into the room to his left.
"Father, Eve and her children are here,"
Jaren said, poking his head in.
"Oh good, let us bring this horrible situation to an end,"
Haith said, standing up. Syria bowed and followed Haith. The 3 entered the sanctuary and approached the family sitting patiently. Ares noticed first and smiled a huge grin.
"The magic lady is here,"
she said, getting excited.
"Please, Ares, you must respect the church, be respectful and let them talk,"
Eve said, trying to keep Ares from yelling. Ares looked down in defeat and pouted.
"Good evening, Eve. My name is Father Haith. I am the head priest. You just met my son Jaren and have already been acquainted with the young woman here,"
he said, motioning to his companions.
"Syria, since you are the mage, I feel it's only natural for you to explain the situation,"
he continued.
"Yes, Father,"
she said, stepping forward.
"After I left your home I returned here and began a rather long and intense study of this mysterious note your daughter had found. After over 2 weeks of hard work I have learned much about it. This may sound very rash, but you have been affected by a very evil and powerful magic. This magic was created long ago by dark mages in the guise of a book. This book, known as the Narcosis of Drexis, was a religious artifact from the now dead faith of Vir, the fallen goddess of creation. Her followers caused many deaths and made many spells of dark intent. This note you found was a lost page of the Narcosis which the Elven Council thought was destroyed over 200 years ago,"
Syria said bluntly, not allowing for any misunderstandings.
"I learned that this lost page is a guide to a dark ritual, one of which could certainly cause enormous damage to the world if it were to fall into the wrong hands. We have called you here today to put an end to your suffering and destroy the page. You must be present during its destruction to ensure you are cleansed of its influence. The means of which are as of yet prepared for your arrival was sooner than I expected. I assure you that by the end of this week you will be rid of the evil, and so will the world,"
Syria continued.
"I understand. I am willing to stay as long as it takes and to praise the gods with all my heart for this kindness."
Eve grasped at everything the mage had said. Ares was ecstatic at this point.
"Does this mean I get to see magic again?"
she asked, almost yelling.
"Why yes, young lady, I will be preparing a special spell for you and your family, and you will be able to see the beauty of magic firsthand,"
Syria said in a sweet voice, playing off of the young girl's excitement. Lilith rolled her eyes at her sister's childish reaction and began to speak.
"The gods are the true power here, and with their protection we will be healed."
Syria noticed the girl's lack of enthusiasm for magic and answered accordingly.
"Of course, young lady, the gods are the source of all magic and are the true heroes of our lives. I merely use their gift as a blessing upon the less fortunate."
Lilith noted the mage's statement but couldn't help but infer that she was trying to win her over with a sense of entitlement.
I pray that the gods can bless men with the same power,
Lilith said in direct response to her feelings.
It is unfortunate that the race of man are unable to feel the blessing of the gods in the same way as others, but they have made you in their image and blessed you with their knowledge of creation.
The city we reside in is a marvel of this.
Father Haith jumped in, seeing that Lilith was trying to rouse Syria with her comments.
My children, we are all creations of the gods and stand equally in their eyes in both life and death. Only our actions upon this haven do they judge, and our actions in the next week will be enough for the gods to recognize us all as their greatest creation.
Haith continued.
Father, if I may ask, what are we to do in the meantime? My family has traveled far to seek help and I am no queen. Our funds are low and we have no place to stay,
Eve said, trying to keep her mind on the big picture.
Unfortunately, we cannot keep you under our roof. There was an accident that severely injured a man and he is in the only room we have for guests, but we will set you up in the closest inn and provide food for the time you are here and travels home when everything is taken care of.
Haith said in reply.
Thank you, Father, this is a true blessing,
Eve replied excitedly.
Now we must prepare for the cleansing. Jaren will escort you to the inn and arrange everything you need. Before we send you off, let us pray. Dear Lords of Creation, bless this family with your protection and let them be rid of the evil temptations of Vir. Let their nights be restful and their days be peaceful.
Haith praised, and the group all bowed their heads. Eve, Ares, and Lilith were escorted out and set up in a large room with 3 beds and were given a meal. Jaren had paid for a week in advance on the church and left them to their devices. Farron felt a familiar presence while he dreamed. He tried to call out, but his voice was muted in a sea of noise. He thrashed in his bed, then calmed as the feeling disappeared. Eve awoke in the middle of the night. A symbol etched into her mind, and she heaved. She gasped for air and recovered. She sat at the end of the bed, staring at her daughters asleep soundly.
I hope to Kellis that these dreams stop,
she thought, and rubbed her eyes. She lay back down and tried to sleep, but the image, still fresh in her mind, was unsuccessful. Syria was clutching the gemstone in her hand. She had woken from a dream about a cute boy eating a banana and kiwi sandwich, but quickly noticed the gem she had hidden away was glowing. She pressed a bit of magic through the gem and it flashed, then went dim. She noted the event in her many pages of events, then lay back down. Not feeling satisfied, after a few minutes she stood up and brewed another bottle of citra berry and haven stem juice, drank a huge mouthful, and began praying. Gerald was sitting in his chair reading a small, but rather interesting book about a group of friends playing a strange game. The rules were that if one person was to be touched by a stick, they would have to do a series of physical tests, then recite a poem or sing a song. He enjoyed these short stories much more than the long-form books his colleagues would yammer about during the workday. His favorite was a 3-paragraph story about a snake chasing a rat only to be eaten by a parasite inside its brain. It was rather crass, but it spoke to him. He felt like he was the parasite. Soon he would eat the snake and in turn infect the rat. It was only a matter of time. He placed the book down and picked up his steaming cup of coffee. He brewed it every morning, mixing coffee beans and a dash of chocolate with alcohol. He found it to get him in the right mindset before he had to once again be the one who answered all the annoying questions. Gerald, where does this door go? How high should this house be? Does this look up to code? He hated his work. He hated being a man of the state. He wanted to be free from it. Free to pursue his real goal. He would take the lead on the battlefield, not war, but alcohol. He knew the bastards at 7 Wheat cut corners by brewing their ale without aging it properly and lied directly to their customers. He had been crafting the perfect rum that would blow his competition out of the water. He was so close to having it finished and would prove himself the better craftsman very soon. He sipped his coffee, then began reading again.